very high regard. We hold our sensei on a pedestal. We put him on a throne. We respect him to the utmost. Well, the person who influenced my martial arts career in my life, and really more than just about anyone in my life, was Soke Shogo Kuniba. And today we get to hear about the personal side of Soke Shogo Kuniba from the person who really knew him the best, his wife, Judy Kuniba, on Black Belt Life. Hi, welcome everybody to Black Belt Life. I'm Darren Myers, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button. That should be right down there somewhere, okay? And leave us a comment if there is someone you would like to see us interviewed. Today, we have our chat open, and I got to remind our director person to hit that on button for the chat for YouTube. And we will have our chat open so that if you want to ask our guest questions that you have that you may want them to answer, please put them in the comments there. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome my good friend for many years, actually make that many decades, the wife of the late Soke Shogo Kuniba, Mrs. Judy Kuniba. Welcome, Judy.
Oh, good afternoon, Darren.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
It's fantastic to have you here. Really appreciate you joining us and all. We're going to get right into it here. I know this conversation could probably go in all kinds of directions as we go through things, because when we get together, we talk about all kinds of things. So anyway, what I'd really love to ask people is, how did you get started in karate? Because you're a Nidan yourself, and you met Soke through the dojo. So how did you get started in karate, and how did you and Soke meet?
Well, this is an interesting story, and people who have known me most of my life will find it entertaining and funny or whatever. But I have been an Elvis Presley fan since I was about 9 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're an Elvis Presley fan, you know lots of other Elvis Presley fans. So I had a friend who saw Elvis in Las Vegas, maybe February or something in 73, 74. And so she smuggled a cassette recorder into the showroom and recorded the show.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, she sent me a copy of the cassette. So on this cassette, Elvis basically stopped his singing, stopped the show, and put on the gi top and his black belt and talked about karate, how much it had influenced his life. He had started studying Shotokan when he was in the army in Germany, and so he continued all his life in the martial arts. So he talked about how karate was not about breaking boards and kicking out light bulbs and fighting people, how much it had meant to him as a spiritual and mental endeavor. So I listened to all this and I said, well, that sounds really interesting. And of course, you have to remember, I was living out in the mountains in Southwest Virginia. There's nothing really there. There's no place for exercise. Even today, there's not a YMCA or anything. So a few months after I got this cassette, there was an article in the local newspaper about this man who had trained with somebody in Japan, and he was going to open a dojo. So I decided I'd check it out and see what it was like. If Elvis liked it, hey, I probably like it too.
There you go, so right.
I joined. There were 45 of us in the first class.
Oh my gosh.
And 1 year later, I was the only one of those 45 people who started that class.
Wow.
Who made it. Everybody else quit.
Oh my
But
God.
I became very interested in Japan, the Japanese culture, So there weren't many books or anything in the local library, but I read every book that they had on Japan and was very interested in it. So the first, I guess I had been in the class for 4 or 5 months when our dojo, the dojo in North Carolina, operated by Butch Velez, we raised money together and paid for the Grand Master of Seishin Kai to come over to teach in our dojo. So my friend Nina and I were very nervous. I mean, we had heard all of this stuff, all the talk about this man, we thought he could practically fly to the moon or something, it was incredible.
It was close.
We were very nervous. So here we met before class, and we go into class together, and we were so nervous we didn't even see him. We walked right past him. And so we had taken a few steps past him, and all of a sudden we hear this. And we look around, and he's standing there looking at us with his samurai face.
Oh, boy.
And both of us nearly passed out on the spot. But then, we bowed. We remembered our manners and bowed, and then he smiled, and everything was fine after that. But
Wow.
That was our first meeting, was at the dojo, and it was all because of Elvis Presley. So after that, if he complained about my Elvis collection, I was, oh, no complaint, please.
Which you had a very serious one, as I remember.
I still do. I still do.
Yes, I could remember the Elvis room in your house, which was Elvis from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, the whole bit. And but it was interesting that he was a martial artist for really like the majority, a great part of his life, and really understood it. And that was way before martial arts was, started to get popular in the United States. So that's interesting.
Yes, it was. I had never even really heard of it.
Right, yeah. Now, Soke, he was, as far as a martial arts teacher, I mean, he was brilliant. He was a genius as far as that goes. As a karate student yourself, what do you think was the greatest lesson you learned from him?
He tried for many years, probably as long as he knew me, to teach me patience, nintai. And I guess that was never one of my virtues. Patience was not. So he would always tell me, patience, nintai. And I think, get a lot better. Relax was also something else. He tried to teach me to relax, to not take things so seriously and not worry about things. So relax, patience, those are probably the things. And they were not physical training things. They were mental, spiritual, if you want to call it, things. And I think that was a large part of what he tried to teach us all.
And he wrote that a lot. Patience is important, and nintai. I remember he gave me a scroll. It was a wide scroll, and he had one, I believe, by the same artist in your house, and it said patience is number one, or patience is first.
Yes.
And that's still in my dojo. So that was always kind of his undertone to all of his training, really. Now, your friendship with him and your relationship as a student teacher and then as a friend turned into a wonderful love story. And in 1983, Soke moved to the United States, and the two of you were married. So, what was your wedding day like?
Well, it was a very exciting day, and I was, of course, very nervous. I needed to learn to relax, but because his English was not the best in the world, I knew he would not be able to repeat the wedding vows and things after the Justice of the Peace said them. and I knew I would probably, because I was so nervous, I probably giggle. So we had the actual wedding upstairs in the suite. We were in hotel down at the beach, and we had the reception down on the first floor, and we had a suite upstairs. So we had the actual saying of the vows upstairs because I knew he couldn't repeat those words. It would have been embarrassing for him to do that in front of a lot of people. So we did it, and then we came downstairs, and probably maybe about 100 people were there. We mostly were people from my office and also old friends of mine, and I think we had a couple of Japanese kids there, and we also had, of course, many dojo students from different places. So it was a great day, but we had all this food and stuff, and we didn't eat a bite. So when the reception was over, we went to the Kyoto Japanese restaurant and ate because neither one of us had eaten anything, and we were starving to death. So we went for a traditional Japanese dinner. So that was, of course, he was not a fan of the kind of food that we have at things like wedding receptions in the United States. So that was the best for him.
That's great.
So
I understand there was a story about the wedding pictures.
Oh gosh, yes. He was into golf by this time.
Very much so. Yes.
Yes, we were. We had an appointment with a well-known photographer in downtown Portsmouth to take pictures, and I spent the morning doing what women do when they're getting ready to get wedding pictures. I had my hair done, I had makeup, the whole 9 yards. And it's time. And what does Soke do? He went to play golf. Well, at that time, we had no cell phones, so there was no way to contact him. And had no idea, didn't even know which hole he was on the golf course or whatever. So here I am fretting and fretting and fretting and thinking that he has forgotten. I didn't know what to think. So he shows up about 45 minutes late.
Oh my gosh.
Of course. They couldn't leave because, they had to finish the game.
Yeah.
So by the time I was about to cry. So in some of the pictures, it looks like I'm almost in tears because he, I was so upset. Yeah. So teaching me patience and to relax was very important to him.
Right. No doubt.
That was I was not happy about that.
Not a good start to the wedding day, to say the least.
No, it was not. And that was a couple of weeks before the wedding day.
Okay, I gotcha. Now, over the years, he knew and he met so many famous people, and the interesting thing about him meeting famous people is they treated him like the celebrity, and it was always amazing to see that. We've got some pictures of some of the different people. There he is. Look at this, Robert Conrad, the Wild Wild West. That is so cool. And some people are going to go, "What are you talking about? That was somebody else in the Wild Wild West." No, that's the original. And that's who is that?
Hirokazu Kanazawa
Sensei. Absolutely. Wow. He was like the head of Shotokan, one of the Shotokan organizations, for many years. Yeah. Wow. And now this picture I love. You got to go left to right. Tell us who all these people are, because this picture is a classic.
I think it's Tadashi Yamashita, Moriyuki Gaona, Soke, and Fumio Demura. They were all good friends. And so when they all got together, they talked and they laughed and they laughed and they laughed and they laughed. And Soke was the comedian in the crowd. They all seemed to laugh when he was at the table with them.
Yep.
So I would have loved to be able to understand all that they were saying because it would have been fun.
Oh,
But
I'm
he
sure.
and Sensei Demra and Sensei Higona had known each other for many, many years, uh, since they were in their teens when they trained together in uh, Dojo in Okinawa. So, and an interesting thing about Sensei Demra, he had a heart attack in I can't remember, 80 something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He was supposed to do a demonstration at Sensei Ozawa's tournament in Las Vegas, and after he had the heart attack, he wasn't able to do that. It was supposed to be a demonstration of Shito Karate Do, of course. So he told Sensei Ozawa, call Shogo Kuniba. So he called, and of course he called on a Wednesday night when Soke and the black belts were at the barrel after
Mm-hmm.
class, eating pizza and drinking beer and having a good time. So here this phone call comes in, and I'm like, once again, no patience, no relax. I'm flying out the door to the barrel, and because I couldn't get anybody to answer the phone there. So he came home and Sensei Ozawa called back, and he went. And Sensei Ozawa paid for us to come out there to Las Vegas for the tournament. And the interesting thing was that, to me, anyway, it was interesting to me after that, if Soke was going to be anywhere in the vicinity, Sensei Demra would bow out because he considered Soke to be the um, number one spokesman for Motofuhashito Ryu Karate Do.
Wow.
So he would not do the clinic or whatever. He would let Soke do it.
Wow. That's cool. And I
Hmm.
mean, Demura, he's been a movie star. He's been in numerous magazines and on shows and things like that. And he would consider Soke really his senior. That was pretty cool. And we
Yes,
think we've got another picture here of Soke and Tadashi Yamashita. And Yamashita, talk
yeah.
about movie stars. Oh my gosh, how many movies has he been in? And he loved Soke. He would just clamor to him. It was pretty neat to see.
Well, he spent a couple of nights here at the house with
Hmm.
us, um,
Yeah, I
and
remember parties in the backyard. Yep.
he's a lot of fun. I think that when he was young, he was a real rabble rouser and got in a lot of trouble. Was maybe kicked out of school.
Oh,
And
really?
yes, he credits the martial arts with saving his life, really,
Oh,
keeping him from going down the streets of the Yakuza or something.
wow.
But he's fun. I remember when we were all sitting out on the deck eating after a clinic or something, and we get this phone call all of a sudden from these two girls that we never heard of. They were students in Soki's oldest son's dojo, and they had just flown over to the United States and were coming to. They were going to tour several places, but they were going to start out here. And so they called us from the airport, come and get us.
Oh my gosh.
Soki
You had
said,
no idea they were coming.
I'm very busy. we all, we're all, passing the phone around and, I'm too busy over there. So then Sensei Yamashita says, well, somebody's got to go to the
Right.
airport. So Pozo and I went to the airport and picked up these two girls, and they were
That's
they were sweet. I always felt bad if I threw a fit over somebody just dropping in, and they came, and then they were wonderful guests.
right,
But these
right.
girls cooked and cleaned and did everything they were told to do.
Wonderful, good.
So
Oh,
nice
that's cool.
guests to have.
And we got another picture here. That this one, two wonderful people,
Oh yes,
Saki Makai Sensei and Hidi Ochiai. Wow.
yeah,
And again, another couple of guys who've been on covers of magazines and very famous martial artists, and again, just neat that they were so drawn to Soke.
Yes, they were. I think that Soke would have been on the covers of the magazines and all that stuff if he had been in New York or Los Angeles, which is where these people were.
Right.
And Sensei Demura told me when he first came to the United States, and I don't know about his immigration status or anything like that, but when he first came to the United States, he slept on a cardboard pallet in a student's garage in Los Angeles, and he ate canned cat food because that's all he could afford.
Oh my gosh.
And I had seen him many years before he became famous or anything. The Las Vegas Hilton Hotel had a show that they did, and it was about Japanese karate and samurai and everything. And Sensei Demura was the person who did all the stunts and everything for that, just like he did stunts later for the Karate Kid. But he and I were walking down the street in Las Vegas talking, and I said, well, I saw this show at the Hilton years ago. And he said, oh, yes, that was me.
Oh,
so that was an interesting aside.
Yeah, really. Wow.
He and Morio Higona were probably two of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, really.
That's great.
So,
yeah, and Soke had such a wonderful personality himself. I mean, a lot of people just knew his karate side, but personally, he had this like aura about him that just attracted people, to him. And I can remember that you could meet him, and in like 10 minutes, you felt like you were his best friend. What do you think it was about him that made so many people drawn to him?
Well, I think a lot of people go through their life searching for who they are and what they're going to be, and they're not happy with their chosen career or whatever. But Soke was very comfortable with himself. I think that he knew who he was, he liked who he was, and I think it was that kind of drew people to him, because here was a person who could give them so much, but yet still keep themselves as who they were. He didn't feel a need to change. He was comfortable in his own skin. And I think that was kind of the aura he gave off. And I think Greg Degnan said something about that in his eulogy for him at the funeral in 1992. Something similar to that. But that was what I think. He just he was happy with who he was. And so many of us are not happy with who we are.
That's
and he was.
Yeah, that's good words coming from you, for psychologists. So that's very interesting. Yeah, and I think that probably, like you're saying, because he was comfortable with himself, he was confident, and that confidence exuded. But it wasn't an arrogant confidence.
No.
It was a very I'm happy to be me. I'd like to know you, and he just seemed to love people.
Well, and he was the same way with 5-year-olds as he was with 50-year-olds.
Right.
Although I have to admit, when we first opened the dojo, we had a whole class full of 5-year-olds. And unfortunately, we didn't have a Donna Ellis to teach those 5-year-olds. So
right.
To Kanji Kobayashi, they were teaching the 5-year-olds.
That's
and
right.
when one, their mothers would come and stay with them, and that was the problem. Because when one cried, then they all cried.
Right.
So Doki would come home and he would say, oh, today somebody quit. Oh, good.
Oh, great.
He's happy when all these 5-year-olds quit because they were driving him crazy. But you would have never known that, not in a million years. But he was so patient. When somebody did a technique and just looked, I'm standing there thinking, oh my gosh, that was awful. And he would never give the impression that somebody had done something totally wrong or whatever. He would just very gently correct the movement
Mm-hmm.
until they finally got it.
Yep.
And I had so many people say, well, he changed the kata. He taught me this kata and then he changed it. Well, that's not exactly right. What happened is he taught you what you were ready to learn at the time. And then as you got better over time, he taught things that were more difficult for you to understand, but were more in line with your current abilities. So people thought that he had changed it, but he didn't change it. He just changed the way he presented it to you.
Yeah, that was real hard for Americans to understand because we want it
Yes.
one
Yeah.
way, teach it this way. Don't change it on me because I'm trying to get it this way.
Mhm. Yes, that was a problem, and people would say, "Oh, he changed it. He changed it."
Right.
No, he didn't change it. You
No,
changed.
he just gave you another way, possibility of a way of doing
Yes,
it.
yes, that's
So
right.
yeah. And speaking of dojo, in 1983, you all opened the Seishinkai Martial Arts USA Home Dojo in Portsmouth, Virginia, which I am
Hmm.
so thankful for because it was 10 miles from my house. And you, of course, immediately became the office manager, whether you wanted to or not, and did
Yes.
all the background work for the dojo and the organization and all. And so you had to work with Soke really not just as he's the karate teacher, but he's your business partner. How was that working out for you?
Well, he was a great business partner. He came at that the same way he did with the martial arts. He never yelled and screamed at me and told me I did something totally wrong, which lots of times I did do things totally wrong. But he was the one. He was the creative genius behind things. He designed the trophies when we had tournaments. He designed the Minjo. He did all of that kind of thing. I basically just did the the bookkeeping and the paperwork. Now we had a major problem with the cash drawer at the dojo
No,
because they
really?
kept cash. Somebody would come in and they want to buy this or that, and they pay for it with a $50 bill, and he would give them the change back, but he didn't keep it right in the petty cash bill and petty cash drawer. So I would end up having a fight with the accountant all the time because my money didn't reconcile.
Oh
So
my
we
goodness.
went over that and over that and over that, and I mean, I couldn't get it through his head. But he absolutely hated paperwork. Hated. I
Yeah.
mean, if you wanted him to do something, if you wanted him to do a drawing for you, or you wanted him to write something in kanji, because kanji was beautiful. But
Yes.
if you wanted him to do something like that, good luck. You have to remind him over and over and over. I remember Lewis wanted something, the 7 times down, 8 times up, or something. He wanted that in kanji for his dojo. And I had to tell him, please, please do this because Lewis
Yeah.
really needs it. And it would take him forever. He hated to do that. And then we got the dumbest things in the mail. I mean, you as a martial artist understand this. I'm sure a lot of our viewers probably don't. But we would get these letters from somebody we've never heard of in Pakistan or um, South America, who knows where. I mean, all over the place, saying that they were the Soke, blah, 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 that nobody ever heard of. Something was obviously made up.
Hmm.
And they wanted him to recognize their Soke ship.
Right.
Well, that was a word I'd never heard, Soke ship.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do that either. But he couldn't do that. He couldn't recognize he couldn't say, well, Darren Myers is Soke of so-and-so, or Joe Blow is Soke of this or that. I mean, that was not in his purview of of what he could do.
Right.
I mean, that had to come from the Japan Karate Federation or something, a higher organization than he
Right.
was. But these people then I would write him a letter back and tell him that, that was not something he could do. Well, of course, then everybody blamed me because Soke was this sweet, gentle, kind, darling little person who would never say no. So
yes. So
to
true.
me, and I was always the one. I was the bad guy.
Right.
Even among his instructors, there would be squabbles over one thought he ought to be promoted and the other one thought he was this or that or whatever, and so they were fussing and he didn't want to do it. Well, I couldn't make him do it. Nobody could make him do it. If he didn't want to do something, forget it. He wasn't going to do it. So I ended up being the bad guy lots of times, or for people who would come from other places and want him to bestow knighthood on him or something.
Yeah, right.
But his own students were like that, his own instructors, not the students in the dojo, but instructors who were from other parts of the country who would come for tournaments and clinics or whatever, and they wanted him to do. I remember one guy stayed at the house or kept Soke sitting in the car outside the house for hours trying to talk him into giving him a promotion.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, I was livid, but there was nothing I could do about it.
Right.
And so it was that kind of thing that was hard about the business for me, because I was put in a position where a lot of people thought that I could talk him into doing something. No, I could not. And I didn't really realize until after he passed away just how much he did do, because I used to say, well, he's not doing anything. Here I am sitting here with this typewriter doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I realized, hey, I don't have anybody to tell me how to do this or how to do this or how to do that.
Yeah.
And he had done all that. So
right.
it was another way to miss him. I mean, he was his own boss, that was for sure.
Yep. He'd do what he wanted to do, and he would always do it well. That was the thing.
Yeah. He could do everything well. He could sing, he could dance, he could cook. He could cook a gourmet meal that was absolutely beautiful to look at.
His curry. Oh.
Yes. Well, I can make that now.
Yes, I know you can.
But he would make these beautiful dinners where he would have this plate of food that we were going to cook in a pot, and it would look like Mount Fuji and have these little waterfalls coming down the sides. It was made out of chicken or something. He'd make carrots that looked like flowers. He did all these incredible things like that you don't think a martial arts master does.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
And probably none of these other people that we were looking at their pictures, probably none of them did that.
Right. Wow. Amazing. Now, from the dojo in Portsmouth, you and Soke traveled the world, and he taught seminars in lots of different countries. I mean, you had some wonderful opportunities to travel. And of course, when you go to different countries, you got people with different cultures and different just ways of doing things and all. How did people from so many cultures respond to his teachings?
Well, it always amazed me that he would teach something that was very, very basic that he taught to beginner students at the Hanbu Dojo. He would teach that to these people in foreign countries, like the man in the picture here in Sweden. He was, yes, he was a high-ranking martial artist. Of course, I'm always a little skeptical of people who are high-ranking martial artists who have big bellies. But anyway, he
That's why I stay skinny.
Yeah. Soke would teach these things, and then he would teach the basic beginner stuff to high-ranking black belts, and they would just be enthralled, amazed, mainly because they'd never seen the bunkai techniques he used. And that, I think, came from his training in Aikido and Judo, the bunkai.
Right.
But he would do that, and I mean the people that were in foreign countries loved him. There's Mexico here.
Yeah, there's Mexico, right? Yeah.
And Sensei Ariaga in this picture, he still has a dojo.
Yeah, he's got that Magnum PI mustache thing going. Yeah.
Yes. And his lovely wife, Martha, and their children, all his children are martial artists. So it's, Soke wanted, and he considered everybody who was a student to be a part of his family. And some people like you and Lewis and Kevin Cherry, those people, Kenny Gavin, you were all like his sons. And he actually spent more time with you guys than he did with his own sons. Honestly, because he was not the instructor for his own two boys. I mean, he was out going other places to teach in Japan. But you and Lewis and Kevin and some of the others that were here were his. Mark, Mike, Bill Negron. You guys were the people that he depended on, and you were his sons. But one of the things that we did that will always be very important in my memory is in 1988 we went to Paris, and we were there for 2 weeks. Well, the first week we had he had a daily seminar, started about 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and lasted, we'd go have dinner and then go back. And so it was an all day into the night kind of thing. I remember riding through the streets of Paris at night with this crazy guy in a BMW, probably 100 miles an hour, and my hair standing straight up. It was fun. But this week, there were 420 people or something from 21 different countries.
Wow.
And a lot of these countries hated each other. We had people from Iraq, people from Israel, Aaron Bernstein's dad was one. We had people from Northern Ireland, people from the Republic of Ireland, they've been fighting for years. We had people from South Africa. We had people from all of these countries who literally hated each other. And they couldn't speak the same language, but they all spoke Japanese karate-do. And, the interesting thing was that by the end of this week of all-day training, these people were fast friends. And they just, I can remember being on a bus. They took us on a bus. That one picture you showed, they were on a boat. It's a boat. We're going down the Seine River in Paris. And they took us the students stayed at the Sorbonne University. So they got on the bus there, and we stayed in a hotel. We all went on the bus, and the Israelis and the Palestinians were all singing these, songs that were Jewish songs or Palestinian songs or whatever, and they were clapping their hands and stomping their feet, and everybody was having such a good time. And I thought, this is a way to have peace on earth instead of all the fussing and fighting. But I mean, it was great. Everybody got along great, and we had a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Wow.
Except for that ride through Paris at midnight. And being scary.
So instead of a world summit of leaders, what we need is a world karate class of our leaders of the countries, right. And we'd have peace on earth. So there's the answer. We've got it right here, folks.
Yes. Yes, I mean, and it was a lot of fun, and I think that everybody there really learned a lot. And Kozo was there to help teach, and Lewis was there to help
Hmm.
teach because there was no way Soke could deal with 400 people
Right.
at once. So he would break people up into groups, and he'd have Kozo with one, and Lewis with one, and he would be with one, and then they'd come back together. But if there was anything that was difficult about his training, it was that he would show you something, and then he'd show you five other ways you could do the same thing.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
when you walked
Absolutely.
out the door, you thought, oops, now which one of these do I do?
Yeah.
And
Everybody remember number one.
that's partly the reason why he started the Goshindo.
Right.
And he put a lot of the techniques that he used into those kata. And that one, kata serve as a means for remembering how to do something, because
Right.
you have a specific technique that goes with each movement in the kata. So it's easy to remember. And because he could go on forever.
Right. Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean,
No doubt. Yep.
incredible. It was a never-ending stream of consciousness, and
Hmm.
he would dream about things like that. He would wake up in the morning, and I would say, "Good sleep," and he said, "Oh, many technique coming," because he would dream techniques. He would dream about them, and then he
Wow.
would go to the dojo and try them out. And some unlucky people, probably yourself a few times, were the uke who got to the benefit of his trying the technique to see if it worked.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And the yeah the thing I always was amazed about was he was just out of all martial arts teachers, and I've been through many, I've been many seminars and with great teachers and very famous names and all. He understood the way the human body worked better
Yes.
than anybody I've ever seen, because he could, like you said, he could take one technique and he could do 12 different ways, 12 different versions of it, and it was amazing. It was just amazing, the understanding of what he could do with his body to do something to yours,
Well, one thing I found interesting is having known him and then meeting all these other people. Okay, you realize that he started his training when he was 5 years old
Right.
with his father every single day. When he was 8, he started judo, and he hated judo, but he did it until he was in high school.
Hmm.
And he did aikido. He did all of these different things, but he did it all his life. He was in training from the day he was 5 years old until he passed away. He was in training to be the Soke.
Right.
And these other people who are wonderful people and wonderful martial artists, people like Sensei Demra, Sensei Ozawa, didn't start their training until they were teenagers or
Hmm.
older.
Right.
So, and the only thing they trained in was the specific karate do. They didn't do judo. They didn't do aikido. They didn't do kobudo. They didn't do those things. Sensei Demra did kobudo.
Yeah, a
He
lot
and
of it.
Soke
Yeah.
did kobudo together in Shinken Taira's dojo, I think, in
Hmm.
Okinawa. But for the most part, these people didn't. They didn't have all that training.
Right.
So I think that was one huge difference with him and other people, was because he could watch you walk across the floor, and I guess it was his judo training, but he could watch you walk across the floor and he knew where your center of gravity was.
Hmm.
And all he had to do was put a finger there and whoop, you hit
Yes.
the floor without
The
any
magic finger.
any
Down you go.
pressure or anything. I mean, I saw him do that in Mexico one time. We had this huge gymnasium full of people, and all the black belts were lined up down one side, And he just came in and went down that line of the black belts.
Right.
One finger, everyone hit the floor. And, it wasn't because they just fell down.
Yeah.
They couldn't help it.
Yep.
So that was interesting. But I really think that the fact that he trained his entire life, and he trained in all these different styles, all these different martial arts, made a huge difference. He could do things because he had this focus and concentration, like Lieutenant Neal. Remember Lieutenant
Oh,
Neal?
yes. Right.
Was a judo teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Took him to the police range in Portsmouth to shoot. And he never shot a pistol before. And he shot a perfect score.
Mm.
And I think, it was because he just had that incredible focus.
Yeah.
And Lieutenant Neal came and showed me the target things that they use, and he says he couldn't believe it. He said nobody in the police department could believe it. And what was also interesting was that Soke badly needed glasses.
Yeah.
And he did that before he got glasses, and without any practicing or anything, he just did it. It's amazing.
Right. Absolutely, no doubt. Wow.
So I don't know how he kept all these things in his head, but he did somehow.
Right. Yes, no doubt. Now, from the you and many of his students, you made several trips to Japan, and
Yes.
of course back to the homeland, back to where karate came from, but back to where Soke came from, and the heart of the organization. Really, how do you see the Japanese people actually treat Soke?
Oh my goodness. I'll tell you a little story that I learned from his son, my stepson Kozo, later. He told me this later. He was so shocked when he first came to the United States and stayed with us. He lived with us off and on for 5 or 6 years. He had never in his life seen anybody touch his father.
Wow.
Like walk up to him, put their arm around his shoulder or something. He had never seen anybody do that. And first time he saw that happen, he thought that person was going to drop dead.
Right there on the spot. Yep.
On the spot. But when you were with Soke in Japan, he didn't do anything for himself. He didn't carry a bag. He didn't light a cigarette. He didn't do anything. I mean, somebody else was right there to do it for him. And he never paid for anything. I mean, we went places and he was, we were wined and dined expensive restaurants. And one guy took him to the optometrist or whoever and had he got his eyes checked, and he had these cool little glasses that fit in this little case, which I still have. You open up the case and the glasses spring out.
Yep.
But, they would buy him things like custom-made silk suits, stuff like that were expensive presents.
Rolex watches.
Yes. And it was a hard thing for me to learn because I like to walk in a store and touch this, pick up that or something, and really look at it closely. If I did that, I ended up with whatever it was wrapped up and taking it home with me as a gift.
Hmm.
One time we stayed in Japan like 6 weeks, and when we went over there, we each had a big overseas suitcase, And when we came back, we had bought 2 more suitcases, and we had 5 boxes full of stuff.
Oh my gosh.
We had everything sent to the Tsuji residence in Tokyo because we would be leaving from Narita Airport.
Wow.
So we had all of that stuff. And if you come to my house, you'll see a lot of that stuff sitting around.
Oh yeah,
you know,
definitely.
Still,
Yeah, your
some
house
things
is like a
came-
museum of
Yeah.
Japanese stuff. It's really neat. It's a beautiful house.
Some things came all smashed to bits, but a lot of things survived.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it
Now,
was,
as far as
it
the,
was hard to learn.
I'm sorry.
I said it was hard for me to learn not to look at something, show interest in something, because I felt bad that somebody would buy it for me,
Right.
and just because I took a look at it. So
Wow.
I had to learn I couldn't do that. And
No window
also,
shopping.
it was hard for me that everywhere I went, I had a bodyguard.
Yeah.
If Sophie was playing golf or something like, and I went to do laundry, and somebody took me to the laundromat, and then they went with Sophie to play golf, and I'm thinking, oh, good, now I can walk down the street and look in these little shops and just have a good old time while the clothes are washing, and boom, a car pulls right up at the laundromat, and this lady gets out to stay with me.
Oh my
She
gosh.
couldn't speak a word of English, so I was awful. That was one thing that was difficult, but I'm telling you that they really treated him well, and they treated me very well too.
Wow, that's neat. Now,
Mhm.
let's talk about the personal side of him. I mean, like, what other things did he like to do? What other hobbies and interests besides the martial arts did he enjoy?
Well, of course, I said he was playing golf the day we were getting our pictures taken.
Yeah.
Our neighbor was a golf addict, played golf every chance he got. And so he asked Soke if he wanted to go play with him. Well, of course, he was good at any physical thing that he ever did. And so, yes, he wanted to go. And of course, golf is very popular in Japan,
Right.
very expensive in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing he did was he wanted to, after he enjoyed this game so much, he wanted to get his own set of golf clubs. So we went to the Best Products store in Norfolk on Military Highway,
Mm-hmm.
and he bought a set of golf clubs. First time he used this set of golf clubs, he hit the ball, and the ball went down the fairway, and so did the head of the golf club.
I didn't know that one.
That would have been a dangerous experience if somebody had been there in the way of the golf club head.
Wow.
So Judy stood in line forever at the Best Products store to get the return on the money and everything. So he was very disturbed about the fact that this American product fell apart. It's probably made in China, but I didn't say so.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, after that, it was like he learned how to buy golf clubs, and he got different people to help him, and so he had all of these golf clubs. So he played golf, his students, and he played golf all the time. And a really great Christmas gift was the Dojo students bought him a membership to City Park
Right.
golf course every year for his Christmas gift, which
Mm-hmm.
was the best gift he could have been given. And he's buried right across from the City Park golf course.
Yep.
Where he spent so much time
Yep. I
playing
can remember
golf.
teeing off right across from where his
Yes.
gravesite stone is there, yeah.
And he also loved to shoot. In Japan, nobody has a gun. Not even the police officers carry guns. So owning a gun or having a gun was a big deal. So he had guns, and students, people like Bill Price, who was a police officer and confiscated guns and things like that, and knew a lot about guns. People gave him presents. And so this was in South Carolina. He had students, Earl Marvin. Marvin owned a big commercial nursery, 10,000 acres of land. And so one of the things that he did every fall was they were very well off. They sent their airplane up here to get Soke and would fly him down for a week of karate training at night and deer hunting during the day.
Nice.
So, yes, he came home with deer. Oh my goodness, here he shot a squirrel.
Yeah.
He came home with deer and directions how to cook the meat, and all this stuff. And I gave it to people that I knew liked it. I could not eat Bambi, so. But he enjoyed that. He also was a fantastic cook. Gosh, I don't know where you got these pictures. This was from the house, I think. He traded karate lessons one time for cooking lessons. In Japan, you have to have a cooking degree. You don't just say, well, I want to be a short order cook at this place and go in and start cooking. You have to have some ability. So you have to go to school and get a certificate to be a cook. So he took cooking lessons, and believe me, he was a fantastic cook.
Yes, he was, no doubt.
And he enjoyed it. It was something he liked to do.
Right.
And he could bring out his creative sense.
Yeah.
With cooking.
And he had some other talents as well. I mean, he had some of the most beautiful kanji. I don't know if everybody realizes that writing kanji is an art in itself. And he also liked to draw. So what kind of things did he draw? Here's his famous bamboo and karate do drawing.
And he always, this I think was on my birthday, for my birthday. He drew the bamboo, and if you watched him do this, you were just amazed. I mean, he never made a mistake. And I remember one time in Las Vegas, somebody asked for his autograph, and the next thing I know, there were a whole bunch of people gathered around watching him write, just writing his name in kanji. But this was for my birthday. This was my birthday present, and he's telling me nin tai, patience.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, he enjoyed the calligraphy, and I think his father wanted him to be a traditional samurai, which included the calligraphy, and so he was specially trained for that as well. He used to complain that he had no time to be a child, and he would sneak out sometimes. He'd sneak out of the bedroom window and go to play baseball or whatever he wanted to do. And of course, when his dad found him missing, he doubled the workout.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yes, but he was a typical rebellious kid, I think. But he liked to draw. Yes, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
But anyway, he enjoyed music. Oh, I mean, I have tapes and tapes and tapes of his favorite singers. He liked what the Japanese would call Japanese country music.
Okay.
And Kozo couldn't stand it. If we were going somewhere in the car, he knew we would be listening to Frank Nagai or somebody like that sing Japanese country music. It's called. So he would put in his earbuds and listen to his modern music. But Soke liked that music, and he could sing. I mean, he was very talented with singing.
Yep,
You
like
should have seen
karaoke.
dance. Boy, he could dance. I mean,
Uh-huh.
he could really dance. He could do everything well. I watched him play tennis one time for the first time ever in his bare feet. Well, I think he had on socks, and by the end of the tennis match, his socks were just big holes. But he'd never played before, and he
Wow.
played really well. So he was very good. But he liked to draw anything. He did all his Garfield cartoons.
There we go. Good old Garfield.
Yeah, yes. I can't remember. I guess it was the kids at the dojo that turned him on to Garfield because I didn't. But somebody turned him on to Garfield, and
Yeah.
he came up with these lessons. I mean, not these lessons, but he came up with these drawings that were funny.
Right.
And he did the whole thing himself. Sometimes he asked me how to spell a word, but that was it. I mean, he
Yeah.
really did it himself.
Here's one of the best ones. Samurai Cat. Toshiro Mifune, eat your heart out.
Of course, Toshiro Mifune is the famous Japanese TV star or movie
Samurai
star.
actor, yes.
Yes,
Yep.
and he's got all of the little things here: the samurai hairstyle and the shuriken on his fingers.
Yep.
He's a fat cat, fat Neko.
That's right. And I love the saya or the case for the sword where he's got at the bottom.
Yes, yes.
Too wrong.
Yes, he could never get that right. I mean, you could stand there and say L, 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 and he'd write R every
Wrong.
time.
Too wrong.
I mean, it just he didn't hear that, and I think that's typical. Most Japanese would do that.
Right. And this
Yeah.
one's great. This is Samurai on Horseback. Wow.
Yes, and you can't see it too well in this picture, but it was the hat is has the Seishinkai logo on it.
Yeah. He kind of sneaked that in there, you know.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
he was very proud of that logo, and
Yeah.
I mean it went everywhere he did.
Yeah, look at this Mount Fuji kind of picture. This is,
Yeah.
wow. That's
I
amazing.
think that might have been another birthday present for me because
Yeah.
he knew I really liked this. And one of his students, Mark Boyette, tried to talk us into having him do some paintings like this, and we go down to the art show, the Boardwalk Art Show, and sell them.
Right, right.
But again, that was paperwork that
Oh, yeah.
you know you
Put him on
couldn't
a
talk about.
deadline. It just wasn't going to happen.
No, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, he was
I mean-
truly an artist in so many ways, martial artist and then artist. He had that artist mentality that it's going to get done when he got it done.
He was
Now-
a very romantic person.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Very romantic. He liked to, he would buy me, before my house was robbed in February, I had 3 or 4 hearts, gold hearts, different styles that he bought me for birthdays or
Aw.
Christmas or whatever, because that was his heart to me.
Nice. Yeah,
So,
wow.
but yeah, he was very romantic about things like that.
That's cool.
Mhm.
And I think back to the dojo and training in class with him was, I mean, just unbelievably awesome. You always learned something new. You always had your eyes open and the lights were coming on and all, and it was fantastic. But I remember that, like on Wednesday nights of the black belt class, the crew would go to
Yeah.
the Barrel, which was a pub across the street, or Pizza Hut afterwards.
Mhm.
And the stories and the laughs, I mean, they were priceless, absolutely priceless. So, got any other of those kind of stories from the dojo days?
Well, we had so many parties. This
Mm.
was, I think, one of his birthday parties. We had Christmas parties, birthday parties, all of those things, and they were all special and very important. So they were all fun for me. I can't remember anything that was outstanding. They were all just
All good
fun.
times.
I got him all these over the hill things. That was when I think he turned 50. He had his, and
Yeah.
that was somebody gave him that little karate bear.
Yep. Remember those? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So,
Yep. And he would always have a clinic on his birthday, or many times had a
yeah.
clinic on his birthday, and man, people would come from all over. I remember the last one we had at my dojo, and there was over 100 people there, and it was just fantastic. This is an old one from the 80s. I don't know what year, back at the old Portsmouth YMCA, and that's yours truly. That's me getting twisted in a knot there. Now there's a story behind that real quick, and it was because of a cat. I ended up late to that, coming to that, and I arrived just a little bit late, like 10 minutes late, and things never started on time, and it started on time that particular day. So I was late. I came in the back door trying to sneak in, and I ran straight into him, and he was like, "Oh, big trouble." And I was like, "Oh." So I couldn't explain the story to him of what happened with the cat and all that stuff that made me late. So I just got my gi on real quick, ran in there, and ended up being the uke, I think, for about 9 hours straight.
And the next day you could barely get up.
I could not get up to go to the bathroom the next day, and loved every minute of it.
Yes.
But he had a great sense of humor like that. Even when things didn't, seem to go right, everything was no trouble, or if, in that case, big trouble.
Yes, you were in big trouble because you were late.
Yeah, yeah. And he did not mind clowning around. He was a very personable person, not afraid to let the personal side out, which a lot of instructors, especially Japanese instructors, they're very staunch, and don't want to show that they're a real person inside. They just want people to see that karate persona. But he was very different than that.
Oh, yes, he loved having a good time. And, a lot of things about him were different from just Japanese men in general. He liked jewelry, watches, rings, necklaces. Most Japanese men didn't wear any of that kind of thing. And a lot of his people who were students adopted that. Oh, gosh.
I think that's a Macarena, isn't it?
I don't know what we were doing. But I was taking pictures, so I was not dancing.
Right.
But these were good friends, dojo students, and good friends too. And we had a lot of fun, a lot of things like that. We did over and over, fun, different places, and they were really the good old days, I guess.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, you got to tell me about this one. This one's a classic.
This was Bill Price's dojo in Lebanon, and this was one of Bill's kids, probably David, the youngest one. And that was his big wheel. So Soke decided to try it. And it just fit him.
Right, he was small enough to fit on it.
He rode it all over the dojo. He was little, he was short.
Right.
5'4" or something. And so he just could ride that perfectly.
And he really, he was a genius in martial arts, but he was a kid at heart,
Yes, he was. He really was.
Really much so. There's a perfect example right there.
A new stance. New
stance. That's right.
You see you can kind of tell the material he's standing on. This was when my brother Daryl, and when they were making pictures for the book that Jim did.
Oh, okay.
So they had this, it was paper, and they hung it from the wall and across the floor so it would have a uniform background. And so he's standing on that, and he's tired of having pictures made and picture after picture. And so he says, oh, new stance. This was his new stance.
That's great. Somebody got the shot. Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, and the fish
and
pond.
the pond, the koi pond.
Well, you know, when we moved in this house, it had just a typical rectangular backyard. And I said, you know what we need back here is a Japanese garden. And he said, good idea. Well, I was thinking about a corner with a few little rocks. I came home from work one day and he had all of these students out there with picks and shovels and wheelbarrows.
Yep.
What are you doing? Oh, Japanese garden making.
Yep.
So, and, you know, people gave him fish and, oh my goodness, we ended up with a jillion fish.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
he would get in the pond, he'd walk around, he'd talk to those fish, he called them his babies, and they would follow his footsteps. I mean, you wouldn't think a fish could have that intellectual ability, but he could walk around the side of the pond, and those fish would swim right along with him.
They'd follow him. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. He'd feed them by hand and all.
Oh yeah, he fed them by hand.
I've got a koi pond, and they run from me.
Yeah, I mean they are interesting creatures. But we had fish. I mean, turtles that just I don't know where they came from. They just showed up, little turtles and
lots of frogs.
Frogs, a lot of frogs.
Yep.
So.
Great time.
Oh, this was one of the birthday parties, I guess.
That's
yes,
great.
And you know, I always dressed in kimono.
Yes. You always look beautiful in a kimono on his birthday. Yep. That's great.
But one time he put, I couldn't do the kimono by myself. You have to have somebody. I mean, somebody has to teach you how to do it. So he folded it in front for me. And he folded it backwards. And so these Japanese ladies came to the party, and one of them looked at me and she goes, "Oh, what? Your kimono, dead people." So he had folded it backward like you would a gi, and it was backwards from the way you would do if it was a real kimono, and it was the way you do a dead person in the coffin. So she took me in the dressing room and changed it. Of course, nobody but a Japanese person would have known that. But
that's funny.
Yes.
I remember going to Japan. I can't remember what year it was, and I believe it was Donna had a bowl of rice, and she was using chopsticks, and she put her chopsticks in the rice, and one of the Japanese guys about had a fit, and he pulled the chopsticks out, he laid them across the bowl, he said, "This way, other way, dead." And she was like, "Dead? Right. What are you talking about?" But when a person dies, you put a bowl of rice there, and you stick the chopsticks in so that the dead person can continue to eat the rice. And so she had done that all wrong. So yeah, little tiny things like that, culture-wise, could really trick you up really easily.
Oh yes, going to the bathroom in somebody's house and coming out and forgetting to change your bathroom slippers.
Right.
And everybody's like, "Oh, bathroom slippers!" Oh my God! And I couldn't tell one pair of slippers from another pair of slippers, and how they could tell which ones were to wear in the bathroom and which ones you could wear in the house. I never understood.
Oh my gosh.
That's a very, very different culture. Yep. Oh yes, that's when.
And here's the kitty cat.
Broken nose.
Now, what is this broken nose thing? I seem to recall this quite well.
Well, we were having a clinic, and this guy was there from South Carolina. And Soke was teaching a technique, and this guy was his uke. And for those of you who are not martial artists, the uke is the dummy who gets thrown around.
Right.
But this guy had a broken arm, and when he straightened his arm out, it didn't really straighten out. It stuck out. His elbow stuck out. So somehow the way the technique went, when Soke turned his head to tell people in the class what to do, this guy's elbow just came on around and hit him in the nose, broke his nose.
Yep.
And the Japanese people that were there immediately were on the phone, because we always had Japanese kids with us. So we had 2 Japanese kids with us.
Yep.
And they were immediately on the phone to their dads in Japan, and they were ready to send for a crew to come over and take care of this guy.
Yeah.
He didn't know how lucky he ended up.
He had no idea that he had a ninja force about to stomp him.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And I had to tell him, please don't send people to kill him. But yeah, he loved these cats.
He did. Wow.
And maybe that's where the Garfield drawings came from.
Right.
Because he liked the cats so much.
Yeah.
In Japan, I don't think. Well, I see a lot of people in Japan now with dogs, and I think there was a cat at. I think Kosuke had a cat that just showed up one day and he was feeding it. But typically, I don't think Sophie had ever had a pet like this.
Oh, okay.
So he enjoyed the cats.
Yeah.
He wanted an Akita dog.
Oh, okay.
And, yes.
Wow. Yeah, I guess who would take care of it?
Yes, me.
Right. Well, Judy, this has been wonderful. Here is Soke, of course, after he was diagnosed with cancer and was going through with treatments, and that was a tough year and a half. I think this was probably one of the last times that he got out. We invited you all down to North Carolina to the Outer Banks, and David Miniker had provided us with his sailboat, and I think Soke, that was one of the happiest days he had toward the end of things there.
Oh, I think so. He really enjoyed that, being on the water. He would always, when he played golf, he would come home, and what he would talk about is that his eyes could see so much green, and that's what he liked about being on the water. He could see the colors of nature.
Yeah.
That was important to him. So here was the color of the ocean.
Yeah. And he loved being in charge of that boat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
He got to steer that. He was in heaven. That was a good day, really was. And then, of course, he passed away in 1992 in July, and he is buried in Portsmouth, right off that golf course you were talking about. And this was 2002. There's this gravestone with the name Kuniba on it, and for those who've never been to it or never seen it, it is an absolutely beautiful gravestone with bamboo artwork on it, but it has a picture of that garden in the backyard of that koi pond and all. And I think what's interesting is we dug out the koi pond and put the dirt, like in a corner of the backyard, and he put, like, I don't know what it was, plaster Paris or something on it, and it made it a little mini Mount Fuji.
Oh, he built a frame. There's a frame underneath that, and then it's covered over with the dirt. Mm-hmm. And he shaped it somehow, so I swear it's shaped like Mount Fuji.
Absolutely.
And it's quickreat, how you pronounce it? Concrete.
Yep.
And we've maintained that over the years. And, have to
That's
spray
it.
paint it every couple of years to keep it white, so it looks
Yeah.
like it's still on the top.
Yeah, and this, of course, was Soke Hayashi that we took from the national championships that were in Norfolk that year, and I drove him over to see Soke's grave because he wanted to see that, along with several other Japanese masters, and that was quite an honor to be the one to do that. But we will never forget. We will never. I mean, every time I step on the dojo floor, my thoughts go to him, and I try to do the right thing and stay loyal and continue on. And I can't thank you enough for this time. This has really been great. Great stories, great memories about him, some things I didn't know, and I knew I'd be happy to find out. I know we got a lot more. We got to do this again.
Yes, probably so.
Yeah, so please come back and do this again with us sometime in the very near future, because I got a lot more pictures that you gave me. And you know what's interesting is you gave me like 3 photo albums, and I've been scanning like crazy the last 2 days. And you give somebody your photo albums, you never know what you're going to find. And I've just got to ask, what's the deal with this picture? I'm sorry I had to do that.
Oh, that was my friend Nancy and I went the year after Soka died. Her husband, she had gotten a divorce, and I was a widow, and neither one of us wanted to be home alone at Christmas. So we went to a travel agent, and we went to we got a good deal to go to the Canary Islands.
Oh,
and
wow.
she had always wanted to ride a camel. So one of the things that we did while we were there was we took a camel ride, and of course the camel had to kiss us. Oh God! So you can see I was not really excited about
That
the
doesn't
camel.
look like you were. It came about
So
just
it
about
was
swallow your
actually-
face.
we rode this camel, her on one side, me on the other, in a basket-like thing. So if we weren't about the same weight, one had to have ballast put in or whatever.
Oh, okay.
We went way up in the mountains.
Really?
To this, follow on a whole train of camels up this mountain path, and ate lunch in a very typical, I guess, goat herders camp. Well, it was made out of stone, a goat herder's home, and ate what they would eat, the cheese and the olives and everything. It was interesting. And then we rode the camel back down. But, I mean, you can get seasick riding on a camel because
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of swaying back and forth and forward and backward and all, isn't it?
I'm surprised that picture was in there. I don't know how that.
Be careful when you give out your photo albums.
Really?
Well, this has been fun as always, and thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I'm sure the people who watch this are just going to really enjoy it. Any last words, any last thoughts?
Oh, I'm very grateful to you and to all the others who are continuing to follow his path. One of the things that he always said to me was that his dream was to teach his karate to the world. And I think we really have tried to do that. And now with Kuniba Kai International, there are a lot of different countries involved, Greece, Sweden, all these different countries. And a lot of that, came from that 1988 trip to Paris, because a lot of the people that were there, and that their children or their students or whatever are now members of Kuniba Kai International. For example, Aaron Bernstein.
Exactly.
His dad, David, was there, and 2 or 3 others, and I can't remember their names. There were so many. But I really do appreciate that. And because that was so important to him. He wanted his karate to be taught to the world. So I appreciate you guys doing what you can to do that.
And that is our pleasure because he gave so much to us. All we can do is try to give it back to others, and we'll never do it the same way he did, but we will give it our best effort, to say the least. So again, thank you so much for your time, so much for the stories. And for next week, we're going to have an interesting interview. We have Soke Bill Price, who was a longtime student of Soke Kuniba, and he was one of your teachers for a good while too, wasn't he?
Yes, the first one.
Yep. And so he's going to be on next week, and we're going to have more stories of Soke Kuniba and his training in those days. So please, if you like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It would help us build the channel and support that. And we will see you next week on Black Belt Life.